Comment down below where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe if you hate Karen. Jamal Henderson never expected his afternoon to be derailed by a piece of mail. It started innocently enough, a certified letter delivered to his home on Maple Street, standing out among the usual mix of junk flyers and birthday cards from Aunt Mildred. Curious, Jamal opened it, only to find a summons demanding his appearance in court over unpaid HOA fines. Confused, he reread the document. There had to be a mistake. Jamal lived in a detached house with no ties to any homeowners association. His only dealings with associations involved picking the right barbecue sauce for a family cookout, not HOA regulations. Initially, Jamal laughed. It was so absurd, it almost felt like a bad sitcom plot. Surely someone had just mixed up an address or a name. But as the humor faded, irritation settled in. Someone was wasting his time, and Jamal didn't take kindly to that, especially with his demanding job at the accounting firm pulling him in a dozen directions. Determined to get to the bottom of it, he noticed the letter came from the Pleasant Acres HOA, a gated community he'd only heard of in passing. Something about the situation didn't feel like a simple clerical error. Jamal's instincts told him this would be bigger than he expected. The next morning Jamal Henderson steered his aging Civic through tree-lined suburbs until wrought iron gates marked the entrance to Pleasant Acres HOA. Cream-colored fountains burbled beside a sign that boasted, "Where Perfection Lives." A keypad kiosk blocked the road, and behind its glass window sat a woman whose platinum bob was so geometric it could have been drafted in CAD software. She eyed Jamal's car as if it dripped motor oil. Name: Jamal Henderson. He kept his tone cordial. I received a summons about unpaid HOA fines. I don't live here, so I'm trying to clear things up. The woman's lips pinched. I'm Beatrice Lancaster, president of the HOA. Our records show you owe 3 months of lawn maintenance penalties. She tapped keys with woodpecker intensity, then glared back. Respectfully, I live on Maple Street, 15 minutes away. Jamal produced his driver's license. Different zip code, different county, no HOA. Beatrice scanned the card, unimpressed. Perhaps you should be more responsible and pay your dues like everyone else. The contempt in her voice curled each syllable. Could we compare addresses? Jamal asked. There has to be another Jamal Henderson on file. With a theatrical sigh Beatrice shoved a dog-eared dispute form through the slot. Jamal filled it out while noting her smug half-smile, as if the paperwork were a courtesy before inevitable defeat. Something about her assumption prickled him. It felt less clerical than personal. Form completed, Jamal handed it back. I'll also need a copy of the alleged violations, he said. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Requests for documents must go through our legal counsel. She pressed a button, the gate remained firmly shut. Conversation over. On the drive home Jamal's annoyance turned to resolve. He opened his laptop, pulled up the Pleasant Acres website, and within minutes discovered an HOA directory listing, Jamal T. Henderson, 14, Oakwood Lane. Middle initial T, different man. Different address. Same first and last name, same skin color, if the resident directory thumbnail was any indication. Jamal exhaled slowly. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping, this was an HOA president who had seen a black name, assumed a single identity, and refused to hear otherwise. He dialed his old college friend Dion Coleman, now a civil rights attorney with a reputation for turning prejudice into courtroom confetti. Dion, he said, I think Pleasant Acres just tried to find the wrong Jamal Henderson because we share a melanin level. Dion's laughter was short and sharp. Email me every scrap of paper you've got. We'll give them a legal education. Dion's downtown office smelled of espresso and printer toner. Jamal spread his evidence across the conference table, the summons, property tax receipts proving his Maple Street residence, and screenshots of Pleasant Acres directory entry for Jamal T. Henderson. Dion flipped through the stack, nodding. Classic misidentification plus bias. Will countersue for harassment and defamation. They drafted a demand letter. The HOA must withdraw the summons, issue a written apology, and reimburse Jamal's legal fees, or face litigation. Dion filed a motion to dismiss in county court and requested sanctions for frivolous action. Meanwhile, Jamal documented everything: Beatrice's sneer, the gatehouse exchange, even a voice memo of his feelings. Anger, yes, but mostly weariness at being mistaken for whichever black man someone found inconvenient. He archived utility bills, voter registration, gym statements, an unassailable paper trail. Within a week, Pleasant Acres' lawyer replied with a terse refusal: "Our client stands by her records." Jamal wasn't surprised. Beatrice's pride, it seemed, had no reverse gear. Court would decide. Dion coached Jamal on testimony. Stick to facts. Let their assumptions sink them. She subpoenaed security footage from the gatehouse and deposition dates for Beatrice and the HOA treasurer. On the eve of trial, Jamal mowed his Maple Street lawn, a perfectly respectable patch of green, and paused to take photos, time-stamped for the court binder. He smiled wryly. Lawn care was now courtroom evidence. He closed the gate, ironed a navy suit, and felt a strange mix of nerves and anticipation. Tomorrow he'd face Beatrice Lancaster under oath, and truth would have the microphone. Cook County Courtroom 3B buzzed with subdued chatter. Jamal sat beside Dion, palms sweating slightly against a yellow legal pad. Across the aisle, Beatrice Lancaster perched stiffly, flanked by her attorney, Gerald P. Whitcomb, whose rumpled suit suggested too many late-night billable hours. Judge Elena Morales entered, robe fluttering. Pleasant Acres HOA vs. Jamal Henderson, docket 24-1947. She adjusted her glasses. Plaintiff's opening, please. Whitcomb launched into a lecture on HOA authority. He projected photos of Jamal T. Henderson's wild Oakwood Lane yard, waist-high weeds, a rusted grill, a toppled flamingo. Your Honor, these violations incurred fines Mr. Henderson refuses to pay. Dion rose, calm. Objection, irrelevant. My client doesn't reside at Oakwood Lane. This is a case of mistaken identity. Judge Morales nodded. We'll hear defense in due course. Continue, Counselor, briefly. Whitcomb concluded, the HOA merely enforces standards essential to property values. Dion approached the lectern. Your Honor, we accept that an HOA may fine its members. But my client is not a member. She displayed Jamal's driver's license, deed, property tax bill, all Maple Street. Then she projected the Pleasant Acres directory entry highlighting Jamal T. Henderson. Different middle initial, different address. Next, Dion called Jamal to testify. He recounted receiving the summons, visiting the gate, Beatrice's refusal to check addresses. Dion displayed gatehouse footage showing Beatrice waving him off. Cross-examination, Whitcomb attempted to paint Jamal as evasive. Isn't it possible you own two properties? My mortgage says otherwise, Jamal replied evenly, holding up bank statements. Laughter rippled, the judge tapped her gavel. Defense rested. Dion requested immediate dismissal with sanctions. Judge Morales recessed for 40 minutes, then returned with a decision. The court finds Pleasant Acres HOA failed to verify defendant's residency and pursued frivolous action. Case dismissed with prejudice. Plaintiff to pay defendant's legal fees and $10,000 in damages for harassment. A stunned silence. Beatrice's eyes widened, cheeks flushing crimson. Whitcomb whispered urgently, but she stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Outside the courtroom, microphones sprouted from local news crews. Dion gave a measured statement about due diligence and equal treatment. Jamal spoke briefly. Today's ruling shows assumptions have consequences. Reporters pressed Beatrice, who hurried into a black SUV without comment. But the verdict was only Act 1. Word of the courtroom defeat rocketed through Pleasant Acres faster than a lawn chemistry rumor. Residents gathered in cul-de-sacs clutching coffee mugs, rereading the news. HOA loses big after misidentifying homeowner. Special assessment funds, earmarked for a new clubhouse pergola, would now cover Jamal's damages and fees. A faction of homeowners demanded an emergency meeting. Beatrice tried to project confidence, but cracks showed. Treasurer emails leaked, inflated landscaping invoices signed by Beatrice, unexplained administrative stipends, a $4,200 decor consulting fee coincidentally matching a weekend spa retreat. Within days a petition circulated. Vote of no confidence in President Beatrice Lancaster. More than half the community signed. At the special meeting Beatrice arrived in pearls and pastel blazer, but the mood was ice. Homeowner questions flew: why pursue a stranger? Why didn't you verify addresses? Where's the pergola fund? Beatrice stammered through charts, numbers didn't add up. Then a surprise guest stood to speak, Jamal T. Henderson, soft-spoken with a shy smile. I've lived on Oakwood Lane 6 years, he said, and got fines each month. I asked for help, but President Lancaster ignored me. Photos of his yard appeared, now neatly mowed, neighbors having helped the previous weekend in solidarity. Applause erupted. A vote followed. Results, 74-6, Beatrice removed as HOA president effective immediately. The board appointed an interim leader and launched a forensic audit. The audit's findings were explosive. $38,000 in misallocated funds, double-billed contractors, and personal purchases disguised as community enhancements. The board referred evidence to county prosecutors. Facing possible embezzlement charges, Beatrice resigned from the HOA and listed her Pleasant Acres home for sale. Her once-admired Bob was last seen darting into an SUV, reporters in tow. 2 months later Pleasant Acres looked different. Lawns were still tidy, but kids' chalk drawings brightened driveways without threat of fines. Neighbors shared garden tools instead of complaints. In a unanimous election, residents chose Jamal T. Henderson as the new HOA president, proof a wild lawn didn't define leadership. At the first community cookout, Jamal Henderson, Maple Street, attended as guest of honor. He chuckled at name tags reading, "The other Jamal." Over ribs and lemonade, the two Jamals bonded. One an accountant, the other a graphic designer, united by a bureaucratic mix-up turned social revolution. Dion, ever the strategist, encouraged Pleasant Acres to implement checks, verify names with photo ID, require board votes before legal action, and cap discretionary spending. Residents embraced the reforms. County investigators eventually charged Beatrice with felony theft. She accepted a plea, restitution, probation, and 500 hours of community service. Ironically, maintaining public parks she once deemed beneath her standards. Justice, Jamal mused, sometimes sprouted slowly like grass, but with persistence it rooted deep. On a breezy Saturday Jamal sat on his Maple Street porch, watching autumn leaves tumble across his adequately trimmed lawn. The court check from Pleasant Acres had arrived. After legal bills he had enough left to fund a scholarship for local teens studying architecture, his quiet way of flipping ugliness into opportunity. He opened a thank you card from Jamal T. Henderson. "Thanks for clearing more than my name, you cleared our neighborhood's vision." Jamal smiled. A misaddressed summons had exposed systemic bias, toppled a petty tyrant, and empowered a community to govern with fairness. Not bad for a guy whose biggest rebellion had been pineapple on pizza. He glanced at the empty mailbox, half expecting another bureaucratic surprise, but only flyers fluttered inside. If the universe tried him again, he'd be ready, with evidence, allies, and the calm conviction that truth, documented and persistent, could flatten any Karen standing at the gate. He sipped sweet tea, savoring the peace, lawn bordering on slightly overgrown, just enough wildness to remind him that perfection isn't the goal. Justice is. Spring returned, and with it, a ribbon-cutting ceremony at Pleasant Acres renovated community garden, funded by Beatrice's restitution money. Two Jamals stood side by side, shears poised, cameras clicking. The banner above read, "Growth happens here." Local media covered the unlikely alliance. Reporters asked Maple Street Jamal what advice he'd offer others facing wrongful HOA action. "Document everything, stand up firmly but respectfully, and bring reinforcements," he said, nodding toward Dion. "Paper trails and good lawyers make unbeatable fertilizer." Laughter rippled through the crowd. After the ceremony, kids chased butterflies between raised beds. Elderly residents swapped tomato seedlings. No one worried about minor lawn imperfections, they worried about cultivating community. Driving home, Jamal noticed dandelions dotting his yard like tiny suns. He left them. Sometimes a little wildness invites bees, and bees keep everything growing. He parked, pulled out his phone, and drafted one last social media post. "HOA drama taught me 3 things. Never underestimate prejudice, never overestimate power, and always mow with a side of humility." He added a final line, "P.S. Pineapple still belongs on pizza," and hit share, glad the algorithm would archive this saga so no one forgot how a misdelivered letter bloomed into justice, accountability, and an extra green lawn on Maple Street.